I would like to introduce to you Dr. Ray Black. He is an assistant professor in the Department of Ethnic Studies. And so we are very, very excited to have him. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ray Black.
Thank you, Dr. Behill. How you doing, everybody? Wave hands. Um, Normally, I would be coming to speak to you after what we call the Black Issues Forum, when we have high school students from around the country, up to 60, sometimes many as 70, come spend a week on campus, and this would be their last day of formal instruction. I would run from that lecture to this lecture, sometimes literally run because it's on different sides of the campus, to talk to you all. And this is a new world, as I tell my daughter, who may pop in sometime in her pajamas still. You can see my messy office. Dr. Vigil said, I teach African American studies in the Department of Ethnic Studies. So I've become really popular lately with people, friends, and others asking questions about things like Tulsa and Black Lives Matter and all these other things. So what you're seeing in the news now, some of us have been doing for a long, long, long time. Since we're not together physically, and I'm going to do my formal part of the lecture, and I just want to ask everybody that you're hopefully safe and sane and doing as well as you can. Wear your mask, all that stuff. You get the old man dad talking here for a second. Okay, let's see. Okay, so you see my screen, the Alliance program. Awesome. Okay, this is going to be wonderfully ugly, as we like to say. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Happy Friday. And what we're going to talk about is becoming a college student. Okay, formally titled The What and Why of Higher Ed. And one of the things they teach you in doing presentations is not to spend your whole time reading the slides. So I'm going to show them and talk about them, but not necessarily read them. But this is an outline of what we're going to talk about probably for the next half hour. I have the chat open, so if you have questions, chime in. If you have compliments, chime in also. I like compliments. I like to give food and other those kinds of things. Perfect. That was the first test. Okay, I am a college professor, which means anytime I talk, there's going to be some kind of test. And don't worry, if you're able to pass this one, then you are breathing and alive. So we're going to talk about what, why, history, and you. Okay, first off, let's start with the what. And take a look at this, find document, and then somebody tell me where it's from. Noe, is that Noe or no?
It's Noe.
You are indeed correct. And why am I starting out a class on who you are and identities when we're talking about the Declaration of Independence? It serves a great purpose to us, Karina. Thank you. And the purpose is, it is the founding of the country that you're in right now, your physical presence in right now. The great difference with the United States of America, even some of those who don't read this document or don't understand this document, are these words. All men are created equal. They're endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is the guiding principle, or should be the guiding principle for this country. And those of us who are not included in that, you'll see men generally taken to mean women, but not necessarily. And are men those who have funds, those who have property, those who have income, those who are indentured service, those who are enslaved? Are they the people who were here before? That is the question. But we all come back to these words when we're trying to hold folks accountable to them. So that's the what. And this fine gentleman here starts to begin to address the why. This is a trick question. Anybody know who this fine gentleman is? maybe this is, let's see, Justin Morrill. He is the reason why there is a CS shield. Anybody understand what's going on in the United States in 1862? War, Civil War, sometimes known as the war between the states, which is also incorrect. Anybody know the size of this war? The size of this war, the South and North states. No, the United States of America versus the Confederate States of America. And the Confederate States of America formed a separate country in order to, they called it states' rights, but states' rights to enslave Black people. So as you're reading about all of these monuments coming down and the Confederate flag coming down, understand that the Confederate States of America was a separate country that rebelled against the United States of America in order for them to be able to keep slaves. So that's what's going on. You have the United States, otherwise known as the North or the Union, fighting the Confederate States of America, which had formed a separate country with a separate president and separate currency, a separate government, so that they could keep slaves. And if you don't doubt me, look up the founding documents of the Confederate States of America. The United States of America and Lincoln were infringing on their rights to keep people in bondage, Africans, and white people's God-given right to keep Black people as slaves. So during the midst of this war, when the country is split in two and fighting against each other, Morrill promoted and got through Congress, and Lincoln signed the Morrill Act, which was an act that donated lands to provide colleges for agricultural and mechanical arts. Now here's another trick question for you. Let's see if this goes. Somebody tell me who this is. Cam the Ram. Why on earth is it? See? It's the easy questions that get you. Why on else? Let me go back a slide. Why on earth is it Cam the Ram? What is the last few words? Agricultural and mechanical arts. And Colorado State University used to be known as Colorado Agricultural and Mechanical. CAM. Blew your mind, right? All right, my lesson's over. I taught you something. It's time for me to go. Thank you, Dr. Beal. Hold on. You probably want me to say more, right? Oh, see now. Okay, now y'all kind of jump in. All right, sheesh, man, go make me work for my living. Okay, so here's the Morrill Act in 1862. There was a little provision in there, and hang on to this, that no money will be given to schools that admitted basically Black students, Native students. This is during the war. A war at this point is not to end slavery, just to keep the country from splitting apart, because it did split apart. At the end of the war, the former states of the Confederate States of America had to reapply to get back into the United States of America. But in the midst of this war, when they established land-grant colleges, part of the reason why you give away land is so that you encourage settlers to go west, to go into these states. And we will teach you how to farm this land. We will teach you how to maintain this land so that you can get rid of the people who are already on the land. Little minor detail there, you know. Anybody knew that, right? You know, they didn't just come in and say, oh, this land in Colorado State, Fort Collins, the people who are living here already, thank you, go away. Why do you think there's a fort? Sorry, okay, so that's 1862. Establishes these institutions for public education so that you can colonize the land. Now, some 30 years later, it's like, okay, this is what's known as the Second Morrill Act. So we're giving money to Black schools and other schools that admit colored students, Native students, Latino students. Why? Because you don't want them to come into white institutions. Formerly, Colorado State University, Colorado State College, Colorado Agricultural and Mechanical School was not segregated. In fact, it was in a sense because there are not a lot of Black people in Colorado, and there were students, Black students at Colorado State as far back as the institution, but it wasn't formally segregated. But a lot of institutions were, which is why you had Black colleges and universities, HBCUs. So there's two moral acts, and what we call as a PWI or HWI, otherwise known as a predominantly or historically white institution. And predominantly is, you know, us scholars, when we write about colleges and we write about, and I do a lot of research on African American students in higher education, we talk about predominantly white institution where like CSU is 80 to 90% majority students. But another term that I like to use is historically white because it changes, it dictates a change in the attitude and approach to how you educate. So part of what happens is the work that we're doing, both in the Alliance program, myself, and those on the street protesting, is to change that mindset from predominantly white to historically white so that we can finally make a change. Danielle, when you say the land was stolen, what are you talking about, my dear?
I just have some experience with the Native American history that exists here, and now that we are actually before any event, we are now speaking of the land here that we are on, or that Colorado State is established on, and talking about the indigenous people who were here before this college was here. And so we acknowledge it now, but it is definitely part of the history as well. Before I even learned anything, it was me just absorbing all the info, saying Cam the Ram, going into things because they are just kind of promoted to you and put in your face. And now I'm excited to continue unraveling the history of what is going on, and also for the other students taking it one step earlier than both the establishment of CSU, but where this land even comes from.
So, and that doesn't happen without those of us like Dr. B. Hill, myself, and others who say, hey, you need to acknowledge this. So protests work. So back to the PWI, HWI issue. Part of what also happens is historically Black colleges and universities were formed at the end of the war between the states, the Civil War, the War of Northern Aggression, depending on how you understand it. And part of why historically Black colleges and universities, Howard being one of the major ones, was created so that those who were enslaved could educate themselves and have a place to go. So that's the contrast. Colorado State, where we are, is not a historically white college or university. It is a predominantly white, and hopefully we're moving towards historically white institution. So that's where we are. And let's get back to this wonderful Cam the Ram in Colorado State. And I'm going to give you this little alphabet soup, I like to call it, of letters. Aren't those fine and wonderful? Most of you are in the program or in high school, what we call K-12. And when we talk about formal education in this country, sometimes we talk about K-20. And once you graduate high school, you got a high school degree. And anybody know what these are? Levels of degrees, different degree programs. Lovely, wonderful. And you are indeed correct. The wonderful alphabet soup. The associates you get at usually a what we call community college or a 2-year college, and the number of years is debatable on funds and your access. And they give associate degrees, associates of arts, associates of science. And these degrees have a standard nationwide where all the accredited institutions like Colorado State belong to organizations that say, hey, this is what the degrees are. The Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science come from what we call a four-year college or university. And the difference between a college and a university is a university is made up of different colleges. I teach in the Department of Ethnic Studies in the College of Liberal Arts, which is one of, I think, 15 colleges in Colorado State University. So it's a different scale, but you can get a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science from a college that doesn't have other colleges in it, or from a university that does have other colleges in it. And if we stop at those first three, those you have to get either at a four-year institution like Colorado State, CU Boulder, that's the last time I'll say it, Metro State, those kind of things. The ones below that are advanced degrees, the MA, Master of Arts, PhD, MFA, MBA, those are advanced degrees. The Master of Arts is not what we call a terminal degree. Usually you can go higher if you get a Master of Arts, but a Master of Fine Arts and the Master MBA and other M degree, master's degrees are what's known as terminal degrees. That's the highest degree in your field normally. PhD is the highest degree in education. I can't get higher PhD. I can get more than one PhD, but then somebody would put me in an institution because it's insane. Most of you, we're encouraging you to come into Colorado State University or an institution like that to get a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. Some of you will go on to the master's level. Few of you will go on to PhD so that you can bore groups of students, not bore groups of students like I am this morning. You're all excited, you're engaged, right? Yes? Say yes. So this is part of the reason why you're going to college and why we want you to go to college. I want to step back for a second. I want to ask you about your favorite subject, you, and how you describe yourself. I'm going to break it up into two ways. The physical characteristic that you have, your height, your weight, your gender, and how you otherwise identify. You know, part of my physical characteristics, I'm a 6-foot Black man, male, cisgendered. That's pretty easy to see, and an issue in the larger society is the protests that you can see are going on now. The second part is what you identify as. Occupation, vocation, who you like, what you don't like, what you prefer. This is going to be part of the test. I'm going to ask you at the end. Since I was 5 years old, I have a pass on eating beets, BEETS. I grew up in a time when they served you lunch at school and you ate the whole plate. And it usually wasn't a problem for me, except when they served beets. And I would call my mother at work. She was a single mom, and says, Mrs. Black, your son is not eating the beets. And she would say to my kindergarten teacher, yes, he will not eat beets. He will eat everything else, but there's no way on earth you can get him to eat beets. That's a preference, that's my like or dislike. My occupation, vocation. What I get paid for is to be a college professor. I get paid to profess knowledge, to provide you information. Notice I didn't say teach you. I said to provide you information. We'll talk about learning in a second. I also describe my occupation as a father. That's more important to me than being a professor, frankly. So hopefully you have somebody in your life whose main identity is to help you along in life. Okay? Are we square? We have any questions on that? I need to see some affirmation. The problem with this is I can't see your head nods, you're going to sleep. So the physical thing is what you are. How you identify is who you are. And that hopefully will change over time. Up until 10 years ago, I didn't identify myself as a father, mainly because I didn't have a child. Now I have a child who turned 9 plus. So I'm a father. And that's one of my most important identities to me. Is that who I am? For me, it is. Is that what people see? Not necessarily. And that is part of the problem. Okay, I want to go on, since there are no questions, to the choices that you make. And this is where Dr. V. Hill and other folks, when they invite me to this program, and Danielle, let's see, a dad versus a father. I shared that I grew up in a single, my mom and my aunts raised me with minimal interaction from my dad. And this is my own explanation, not necessarily what you, if you're going to research it and teach it in a human early childhood class or a child development class or sociology class. A dad is somebody who provides the material for you to be born. A father helps raise you. So I am a dad because I have a child, but I also choose to be a father because, and she's probably watching videos now, because I choose to be in her life. Hopefully somebody in your life has told you you need to go to college. Is that correct? This is where you get in and type in the chat. Whoa. Good Lord. You think they just want to get you out the house? This is all before the Rona. And they're like, go to college, get out the house. In all seriousness, that person, whether they be a parent, father, mother, other, somebody who cares for you. And one of the things I want to highlight here is going to drive Dr. Hill crazy is what are the alternatives to going to college? You do not have to go to college. This is a choice. Matter of fact, it's not the easiest thing in the world to go to college. It's expensive. It's time consuming, and economists talk about the opportunity costs. What you could be doing with this time in your life. If you have the means, you can go across the world. You hear about these folks who go, oh yes, I'm going to take a gap year, or I'm going to go sailing around the world. I still don't have that kind of money. Now, this is a college professor talking to you in a course that is trying to, in a program that's trying to get you into college. And I'm bringing up that, as Dr. V. Hill just co-signed with me, that college is a choice. And this is when I usually get the looks if I could see you. It's like, oh, Dr. Black, you're crazy. Why are we here if you're saying college is a choice and we don't have to go to college? It's true. You do not have to go to college. One of the alternatives to college is everything else. Work that helps you survive on your own. Pay your rent, hopefully have something so that you can meet your needs, your food, clothing, partying. You don't need college for that. And not everybody should go to college. I tell you, my mechanic, my plumber, my electrician, the wonderful people who help clean my house, they didn't need to go to college. My father was an electrician. He didn't need to go to college. Okay? So then why do you go to college? Why do people like me say, if it's all possible, make the choice to go to college? And this is where the test, the final exam comes in. You ready? The choices that you make. Part of what I will make explicitly clear, is that this society is not fair. Part of what that alphabet soup I gave you earlier, what that does when it's behind your name, is it opens doors for you. You may still have to knock the door down. And right now, I can guarantee you, other than myself and Dr. V. Hill, most of you probably don't even know the doors that are there to knock on. That we at this level have been banging open, kicking down. My mentors have kicked down. Those who have fought to get and overturn Plessy Ferguson so that we didn't have discrimination and we didn't have a two-tiered system, even though we still do, not legally, that we open these doors and give you options for the rest of your life. Okay? that's a reason to go to college. You can go here and learn absolutely nothing. Okay? And that's possible. Believe me, there are a whole lot of well-educated idiots, like I call them. And I see you, Denny, who's also one of my brilliant students. Um, and I feared going to college. I was told all my life I had to go, I had to go. And I didn't do well the first time. And I flunked out. And it took me 20 years from the time I started my BA to the time I end my BA. And we're going to talk about how, if you decide to go to the college, if you decide to go to college, how to avoid that in a minute. And it is scary. Think of it this way. You're home now, you're with the people you know, everything is, you're familiar with it, whether it's good or bad, you are familiar with it, you know it. And especially if you go away to college, even if it's from Denver up to Fort Collins, you're dropped on a different planet. At least you're dropped in a different city, and there are different rules. You know, a professor like me is going to give you a syllabus and put the due dates on it. And I'm not going to remind you to do this. If you do it, you don't do it, especially some professors who are not focused on the classroom. You know, if you don't do it, you flunk. If you flunk, that's on you. Your choice to come to college, your choice to be successful or not. This is not the last slide. I'm going to point out what's at the very bottom here. See that email? Part of how you become a success is you don't do this alone. Part of how you succeed, you have this idea, this American myth that everybody does it alone. Self-made man. That's such bull. And yes, I'm a college professor. I can curse, and I curse in my classroom. You need friends. You need allies. You need people who you can work with, people who support you, people you can lean on when you need help, people you can help when you are there. We are not in this alone. I am not in this alone. Dr. Vigil and I talk a lot about how we get through this, and we're leading this program for you. Okay? So do not, I'm going to take that slide off of college. A college professor is the easiest person on the planet to find. All you need to know is my name and my institution. And my email, since they've standardized emails, it's pretty easy to find. I will only say one thing. Do not ask me for help on your papers, as some other students have had, okay, on your high school papers. I will help you. I'm one of your resources now. You can ask about college. You can ask about making those kind of choices. I'm going to turn my screen choice off there. I want to make sure to answer Paul's question. It is scary to go to college. I agree, Danny and Paul. And you may not pick the right career. I will tell you honestly, the first time I went to college, I was going to be an engineering major. I graduated and I have 3 degrees in literature. So engineering wasn't the right choice for me. Just because you make the initial choice, it's not the end. You're still going to be living, you're still going to go on, and you can change. What I study also is what we call persistence, how far you go and keep going. You can, and when you change, if you find out, you know, you find you pick a major that sounded good, like for me, engineering, but I'm really in love with literature, I'm really in love with history, I'm really in love with humanities. And once I did that, I became a success. You can change. And anybody tells you you can't change, maybe you need another mentor, you need another advisor, and you don't just have one advisor or mentor. Okay, that's the other thing. And I'll tell you another story, and then I want to open it up to more questions in the few minutes we have. Actually, if I'm sticking to the schedule, 2 minutes. When I was in a summer program, that my professor at Sacramento State University said, "Ray, go sign up for this program. Go away for the summer." I'm like, "What is this?" And I'm at the University of Michigan, and the librarian in African American Studies says, "Contact these 3 people, these 3 professors on the project that you're working on, and they'll help you." I emailed all 3, got 1 response. That person who responded, Dr. Chrisman, became my mentor for the next 15 years. Okay. I am here because of him. He was one of the people on the stage of the strike in 1968 at San Francisco State. So I learned a lot from him. But it's all because I knocked on the door. I asked the question, I followed advice. Okay, Tanner, let me see your question here. There is something I call life happens, and about once a week during the semester, I refer a student to student case management because something in their life has happened. They've had an incident with law enforcement. They've had a death in the family. They've had a physical issue. They've had, a mental issue. Life happens. And thankfully, there are a lot of resources at Colorado State that frankly weren't around when I first went to college to help you through it. Closed mouth don't get fed is what we say. If something is going on with you, reach out for help. Reach out to somebody, and you may have to reach out to a couple of different places because I am very open. Danny can tell you that I get all up in your Kool-Aid and try to be helpful, but not all professors are like that, and don't expect them to be. And as Sam was saying, you have advisors and you have professors and you have people in the cultural centers. You have Dr. V. Hill. You have other folks on campus. Somebody, if you need help or you need support, if you just have questions, ask the question until you get the answer.
Well, I was replying, so I was typing up something, but I'll just say it to you guys. So replying to Paul's question, honestly, in my opinion, I don't think there is a right or wrong way. When you kind of like, whether you have to choose to pick the right path or the wrong path, because honestly, you'll find something and then you'll find something you like, and then you'll find something that is more passionate to you. Like I've gone into classes where I'm like, oh, this is very interesting, but I'm not really sure if I want to go further into it. But then I've been in classes where I'm like, wow, like this is crazy. Like I'm so passionate about this. I love this. I want to learn more. And having like a degree in itself is an accomplishment. So it doesn't really matter about what degree it is. Like the best advice I've probably ever gotten from someone was, because I was worried about my major because I'm an ethnic studies major, and a lot of people devalue that. And they're like, well, what are you going to do with an ethnic studies major? And honestly, there's so much stuff you could do with something, because it's not about like what degree it is. You could have a business degree, an ethnic studies degree, or you could have a degree in like environmental science. It's about the connections you make. Because if you don't make those connections, what's to say you're going to get the job you're going to want, paying the salary you want, or getting the job you don't want, paying the salary you don't want. So it's just kind of like you need to make those connections and go with what you're passionate about, because in the long run, what you're passionate about is what's going to drive you the most.
And I'm gonna ask all of you, as you listen to Danny, if she is in an interview and you're hiring, does it matter what her major was? Because she can explain what she did, why she did, and that she's passionate about it. Part of what we in liberal arts promote, and it's true for me because my degrees are in literature and I'm teaching African American studies and higher education. We teach you how to learn. The overused phrase is how to become critical thinkers, so that we learn not only the material, but how to ask questions, how to think about things in a variety of different ways, how to approach it. And ethnic studies, I think the strength of our particular degree, a little self-promotion here, is that it helps you look from different perspectives. You get this master narrative, the orange person in the White House has a particular view, but he doesn't see us. He doesn't see us even when we're filling the streets across the world. It's not just Denver or Minneapolis, it's the whole world is now talking about Black Lives Matter. And Black Lives Matter didn't happen 3 weeks ago. It didn't happen 5 years ago. It happened five centuries ago. The phrasing is different. We want equality. We want our civil rights. Our lives matter. So that's part of the perspective our degree gives you.